Hey YouTubers and my little whappers. Welcome to multiple choice tips for World History AP. These are specifically for the World History test, but this can really be generally for any multiple choice tests that you're going to take in your life, which will probably be more than one, I would reckon. So let's get started with some of my favorite tips for taking multiple choice tests. First, the first thing is just to take it easy. A lot of people stress themselves out a little bit too much before they even sit down for the exam, and so you end up basically psyching yourself out. So up until the night before of the exam, you've pretty much done all that you can do. So the first thing you want to do is eat a good dinner the night before, especially before the big exam. And eat familiar foods, because if you eat something weird, then you don't want to get sick the next day. So something familiar, something easy, and a nice meal. Second, review before you go to bed or the morning of just the basic themes from the unit or from each unit that you're taking this test on. Don't go through and hit nitpicky details. Just see if you can go through the basic themes and remind yourself of the big picture idea. Do not cram. If you attempt to spend the entire night before cramming information into your head, chances are you might pick up a thing or two, but you're going to make yourself so tired and stressed out that it's not going to matter. So don't cram the night before the exam. Give yourself some time beforehand to do that. Go to bed at a decent time. If your normal time period is to go to bed, hold on. So if your normal bedtime is around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever it is, stick to that normal routine. Maybe even go to bed a little bit early so that you get yourself a nice, good night's sleep, because the exam is important. So do that. Wake up good and early. Get yourself a nice breakfast. Maybe even review some of those themes from the second bullet in the morning time, and then you're nice and refreshed and ready to go. Just relax. This is the whole idea. You got to take it easy and go in relaxed. If you go in all uptight, things are not going to be fun. Second, as you get the test and you look through, the first thing you should think of is accuracy. You want to get the most correct answers possible first. So you're going to be looking for questions that you know the obvious answer to. You're going to have strengths and weaknesses on any exam, so find those questions that play to your strengths and answer those first. Get all of those right, and then go back to the ones that were difficult for you at the end. Here's the rationale for this. If you go through and try to answer every single question and spend a ton of time pulling out your hair on the really difficult questions, you're just going to miss questions that you already knew the answer to but didn't get to, if that makes sense. So let's say the multiple choice question, there's 70 of them, there's 70 questions on the test, and because you're trying to go through every single question, you only get to question 50, and some of those you're definitely going to get wrong, but that last 20, you're going to get almost all of them wrong because you had to guess on all of them, or you had to leave them blank. So instead, go through all the ones you know, and if you're able to get through 50 questions that you know, then that's 50 that you have correct, and then you can go back and guess on the ones that were hard. It'd be better to guess at one that's hard that you don't know than to guess at one that you probably actually know the answer to. So answer the ones you know first and come back to the difficult ones at the end. If you're just about out of time, guess. The worst thing you could do for yourself is leave a question blank. There is no guessing penalty on the AP exam, the World History AP exam. So even if you get it wrong, that's going to be the same as if you just left it blank. Plus, if you put down an answer, there's a 1 out of 4 chance that you're going to get it right. So take those odds. 25% is not bad, and try to get it right. Third tip is to guess well, and this might seem silly because a guess is a guess, right? Well, not always. Narrow it down to the possible guesses that you could have at the end. And most of you already do this, but it just makes more sense. If there are 5 options on a multiple choice test, you automatically have a 20% chance if you just guess. Whereas if you eliminate just one of those options, you give yourself an extra 5% chance of getting it correct. So if you can narrow it down again to only 3 options because one of them you know is not the correct answer, now you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right, 33% chance. And then best case scenario, if you can narrow it down to just 2 questions that you know one of them is the correct answer, well, now you got a 50-50 chance, and that's a heck of a lot better than the 20% chance we were talking about earlier. And then guess and go. Don't spend more than a minute on every single question. You guys know that this is the most stressful part of the exam is that you have less than a minute for each question. So do not spend more than 1 minute per question. Unless it's one of those questions where you got to read an entire paragraph and then answer a bunch, do not spend more than 1 minute per question. If it's a hard one and you're not getting it, skip it, come back to it at the end. All right, fourth tip is to read these questions very, very carefully. Oftentimes they contain keywords that if you miss these keywords, you are going to miss the entire question. So look for the who, the what, and the when of the question. Who is it talking about? What society, what civilization, what place is it talking about? What are they asking you? Are they asking you what they did economically, politically? Are they asking you about migration? What is the question asking? And then when? What's the time period that we're talking about here? If you can identify these three things, then you can kind of rephrase the question so that you understand it. Look for these keywords like except or not, because that means you're looking for the incorrect answer or the one that is not the acceptable. So, for instance, it will say all of these are key features of the Mesopotamians except, well, if you didn't read it carefully and if you just read key features of the Mesopotamians and you find the very first one, A, is a key feature of the Mesopotamians. They relied on river valleys and the irrigation from rivers, and you're like, oh, that must be it, then you didn't read the question correct and you got it wrong. So read it carefully and make sure, underline, circle, do what you need to do, write on the test so that you can identify those keywords. Reword that question. This goes back to the first point. Reword the question so it makes sense to you. Chances are if you can't reword it in friendly language that you can make sense of, then you don't understand this question. So make sure you can reword it and say, this is what this question is asking, and then find your correct answer. Read the choices very carefully. Oftentimes, you will just get to the first choice that you think looks correct, and then you'll mark it as correct, and there's another one that's more correct. That's the tricky part about the AP exam. They're trying to fool you into picking one that you think looks really good. And sometimes these options do look really good, and then you find another one that looks just as good, and then you've got to decide between the two and read them very carefully. Use your pencil to mark the ones that you know are wrong, maybe with an X. Mark the ones you think could be right, maybe with a question mark, and then the one maybe you think it is with a 0, a possible option for an answer. Don't stop at the first correct looking answer. It's a mistake that a lot of people make, and they circle one and then only to realize after the test there was probably a better option or that they just didn't read. Look for obvious wrong answers. The ones that are obviously wrong are either off topic or talking about something else, and mark those off. And then look for these keywords that basically are like all or nothing. So if you see these words never or always or every single time or all of the time or none, any of these that are kind of the extremes, they're almost always wrong. And I say almost always wrong because if I say they are always wrong, then I'm basically doing what I'm telling you to look for, which is that word always. Sometimes they could be correct, but in most cases, if it has these words, it is going to be a wrong answer. So